Does non-alcoholic wine even taste like wine? That is the question that is pressing today, because in more recent years, there has been a huge uptick in the use and the availability of non-alcoholic wines that are flooding the market. The truth is that alcohol in wine plays a very important role. Alcohol in wine is produced through the fermentation process, as we all know, where sugars in the grape juice get converted to alcohol. But during this key fermentation process, all the aromas and flavors are also developed during this fermentation process. Alcohol is responsible for those creation of aromas and flavors. Alcohol also gives some body, some mouthfeel, some texture to the wine. Not to mention, it also creates a longer finish. Generally, high alcoholic wines tend to have a longer finish. There's a little bit of warmth that you get at the back of your throat, but because it's mouth coating, it creates a longer feeling of sensation on your palate and allows the aromas and flavors to last for longer on your palate. To a naturally balancing extent, alcohol also gives certain ageability to wines. So guys, alcohol is not just for intoxication purposes, but it plays an intrinsic role in wine. I was a real skeptic about non-alcoholic wines. What are non-alcoholic wines? They are those that have little or no alcohol in them. So how do you end up with a wine with no alcohol? There are 2-3 ways you can do this. Firstly, as we've just understood, fermentation is important. So some of the most premium non-alcoholic wines, which probably end up with a little bit of alcohol at the end, are made through the reverse osmosis process, where the wine goes through a very low temperature vacuum distillation, where they separate the aromas and the alcohol because they evaporate. The alcohol evaporates, and aromas, being the most volatile compounds, tend to also evaporate at very low temperatures. When you warm the wine at low temperatures, both the aromas as well as the alcohol, they tend to evaporate. These aromas are thereafter collected separately and are added back to wine. But what we actually end up with is a wine that has gone through proper fermentation, where sugar has been converted to alcohol and is thereafter been separated from the wine. There is one more way of creating a non-alcoholic wine, and that is through simply not allowing the wine to go through the fermentation. In this case, what we're really talking about is just plain, simple grape juice, a grape juice that hasn't gone through any fermentation, so it hasn't had a chance to evolve some of those aromas and flavors that are created as a part of the fermentation process. So in fact, then many critiques actually argue that when you're buying such a non-alcoholic wine, all you're paying for is really just very premium grape juice that has never been converted to any form of wine. So today we're going to do a little experiment, a very exciting experiment. I have 2 glasses here in front of me. They're both rosé sparkling wines, and one of them is a non-alcoholic wine, and the other one is of course a normal alcoholic wine, which is rosé, right? I have no idea what these wines are. My colleague has just poured them out for me, and as you can see, the bottles are in these blind tasting sleeves. So I'm going to literally taste both these wines blind, and I'm going to just describe them and explore if firstly I see a difference between the two. Is there a difference between alcoholic and non-alcoholic at all? And 2, is one better than the other? Is there even a difference? Are they both equally enjoyable or not? So let's begin. Let me start with the one on my right. As you can see in color, they're both salmon pink in color. They're both literally the same color. So from a visual point of view, they are not dissimilar at all. On the nose, this wine is floral. There's some lovely delicate red fruit like red cherries, red strawberries that are coming through. There's a little hint of minerality, like an earthiness to the wine, which is kind of leading me to old world. I'm not getting very many autolytic characters, the typical brioche bread, Lisi character that you find on a champagne. So this is definitely not a champagne. The wine on the palate is really very refreshing. It's got a tad bit of sweetness, but it's in good balance. It's sitting very well. I don't really perceive the alcohol. I don't get the alcohol, if there is alcohol at all in this wine. But what I do get is typical wine flavors. I get red fruit coming through. I get some floral notes coming through. The acidity is soft and is in good balance. Overall, the wine is very well balanced. It's a very harmonious wine. It's drinking really well. And like I said, because the alcohol is not perceivable, but it to me tastes like wine. I would think of this wine as coming from a region with a cool climate influence. It's definitely not champagne because there are no complex autolytic leesy characters on this wine, but it's a simple, easy drinking, perhaps a wine made through tank fermentation because there is mousse, but it's soft. It's not creamy. There's no persistence or bubbles on the palate. So it's an easy drinking, fruity, cheerful, perhaps inexpensive sort of a wine. I would lean towards Prosecco, Prosecco rosé. It's very Italian in that sense. And Prosecco again tends to be low in alcohol. So if it has alcohol, and because it tastes like wine, it's perhaps got some alcohol in it, although it's not perceivable. But to me, it tastes and smells like a Prosecco rosé. I'm going to move on to the next wine. And this wine, as I said, is lovely soft pink in color. Very attractive color. There's also some froth at the edges. On the nose, the wine again has got a lot of bubblegum, quiche, sort of soft red fruit character. But what is distinctive is I get some grapey notes coming through. Now, I don't know whether you think this is an interesting observation, but we all know wine is made from grapes. But the one thing we generally don't pick up in aromas of a wine is grape itself. But I'm getting some grapey notes coming through on this wine, which is perhaps leading me to think, is this grape juice? I'm going to take a taste and not draw any inferences before that. So this wine is, it's got spritz, it's got the effervescence, but the structure of the wine is not as beautifully integrated as this wine. I can sense it's a lovely spritzy drink. And it's got these bubbles which are very enjoyable, they're very uplifting. But I can taste the base wine separately from the bubbles. The bubbles are not really integrated into the structure of the wine. So it's like having a spritzy juice. So there's lots of red fruit, but the red fruit is very bubblegummy, red fruit, very fresh fruit, but it's kind of sitting separately from the bubbles. And in terms of acidity, it's not the kind of acidity that I get, the mouthfeel that I get on a wine, which is leading me to think that this is perhaps the non-alcoholic wine, which is, I think, essentially grape juice. But it's really nicely made. I have to say, as a drink, it's very enjoyable. It's very uplifting, very energizing. I think for people who are not into alcohol or prefer not to have alcohol for whatever reasons, would enjoy a drink like this. Just as a drink on its own, it's really nice. So definitely to me, this is the non-alcoholic wine. And this is the wine, which I'm hoping is the Prosecco Rosé. Let's take a look if I was correct. All right, that's Luna Argenta Prosecco Rosé. Okay, very pleased with that. This is a brand called Sauginy from Paris, Sauginy Paris. This is a 0% alcohol. Does it taste like wine, to answer the question? Not entirely. I'm not fully convinced, but it's a fun drink. I think for those who are teetotalers and have never had wine or alcohol and don't expect to and don't intend to, but don't, I would actually enjoy swirling a beautiful drink in their glass and would enjoy something with food or enjoy something at social events or even at weddings, big large weddings where some families, they prefer not to pour alcohol. A drink like this could be very interesting. Yeah, and it's a drink in itself. It doesn't have to even be a substitute for wine. It's a drink that stands on its own 2 feet. So I hope that was an enjoyable video. I hope you enjoyed some of the information we shared with you about what is the difference between non-alcoholic and alcoholic wine. And I hope you'll go out there and try some more yourself and leave us some comments on what have been your personal experiences of having non-alcohol wine. And are there any great brands out there that you've recently discovered that you'd like to share with us? That was Mastering the Art of Blind Tasting, and I will no doubt be back with more. Until then, take care. Peace to you all. Cheers.